They looked like freedom. They sounded like thunder. But some of the motorcycles from the 1960s were accidents waiting to happen. They were unstable, unreliable, and at times outright deadly. These are the 12 most dangerous 60s motorcycles ever built. Bikes that earned their reputation not on racetracks, but in emergency rooms. Number 12, Harley-Davidson FL Electra Glide. It was supposed to be the beginning of something new. Instead, it became a warning. The Harley-Davidson FL Electra Glide from 1965 promised luxury, modernity, and the future of American touring. What riders got was a heavy, unpredictable machine that often fought its own pilot harder than the road ever could. This was the first Harley to come with an electric start, a major step forward on paper. But in practice, the system was unreliable and prone to failure. Many early Electra Glides wouldn't start at all, leaving riders stranded with a battery-draining lump that refused to turn over. Even when it did start, the ride itself introduced new risks. At the heart of the bike was a V-twin engine displacing 1,198 cubic centimeters. It was a big motor built for cruising, but the frame and suspension weren't up to the job. The telescopic front forks lacked rebound control, and the rear shocks were notoriously stiff. That meant poor feedback on corners, brutal impacts over bumps, and a bike that never quite told you what it was about to do next. Power output reached roughly 55 horsepower, which might not sound outrageous, but with a wet weight close to 800 pounds, the Electra Glide was more barge than bike. The weight distribution was uneven, and the front end had a tendency to dive sharply under braking. That made emergency stops feel like calculated risks. Top speed hovered near 105 miles per hour, though few dared push it that far. At higher speeds, the steering became vague, and the whole chassis would begin to weave. Riders who weren't paying attention could find themselves wrestling the handlebars with nothing but prayer and instinct to keep them upright. Torque came in around 65 pounds per foot, and while that gave the engine grunt, it also meant the rear tire could break loose under sudden throttle. Combine that with weak drum brakes and minimal front-end grip, and you had a recipe for low-speed tip-overs and high-speed panic. Fuel economy landed around 35 miles per gallon, but no one was talking range. They were talking about reliability, or the lack of it. Electrical faults, vibration-induced failures, and inconsistent ignition timing made the bike unpredictable. You didn't know when it would fail, only that it would. The Harley-Davidson FL Electra Glide from 1965 looked like progress, but beneath the chrome and comfort was a flawed machine, one that earned its place on this list not because it was fast, but because riding it felt like rolling the dice every time you fired it up. Number 11, Triumph T120 Bonneville. It was fast, sleek, and had a name inspired by salt flat speed records. But the Triumph T120 Bonneville from 1960 wasn't just built to thrill. It was also dangerously flawed in ways that riders learned the hard way. Triumph wasn't aiming for comfort. They were chasing performance, and the Bonneville delivered plenty of that. With a parallel twin engine displacing 650 cubic centimeters, the bike had real muscle for its time. It came alive in the mid-range, with quick acceleration and enough pull to leave slower rivals behind. But speed without control is a risky equation. Handling was the Bonneville's biggest weakness. The original frame design lacked the stiffness needed to manage the engine's power. At anything above 70 miles per hour, the front end started to feel loose, especially during cornering or hard throttle. Riders described the sensation as a weave or wobble, and once it started, there was no easy way to stop it. Horsepower peaked at around 46 horsepower, a serious figure back then. It gave the bike bragging rights, but also invited riders to push beyond what the frame and suspension could handle. And while the front forks looked modern, they lacked the damping needed to control rebound. On rough roads, the bike bounced and shook like it had a mind of its own. Top speed sat close to 105 miles per hour, but few held it there for long. The rear shocks struggled to keep the tire planted, and the bike's tall stance made it twitchy in strong winds. Even a long straight line could feel unpredictable if the surface wasn't perfect. Torque came in around 38 pounds per foot, arriving low in the rev range. That gave the Bonneville serious pull from low speeds, but it also made throttle control tricky. A sudden twist of the wrist could send the rear wheel spinning, especially on loose surfaces or in wet conditions. Fuel economy averaged near 50 miles per gallon, but few were focused on fuel. They were trying to stay upright. Add in drum brakes that faded under heat, a seat that punished long rides, and electricals that occasionally failed without warning. And it becomes clear why this bike earned its reputation. The Triumph T1 20 Bonneville may have looked like the future, but under its iconic tank was a wild ride waiting to turn. Riders loved it, but they respected it out of fear. Because once the speed came in, control often went out the window. Number 10. BSA Rocket III. Sometimes ambition moves faster than execution. The BSA Rocket III from 1969 was supposed to be a bold new chapter in British motorcycling. Instead, it marked the beginning of the end. On paper, the Rocket III had all the right numbers. It packed a 3-cylinder engine displacing 743 cubic centimeters, which was a serious upgrade from BSA's older twins. It was designed to compete with the rising wave of high-performance machines from Japan. But where those bikes offered refinement, the Rocket III brought weight, heat, and unpredictability. Its horsepower output came in around 58 horsepower, delivered at high revs that demanded commitment. Unfortunately, the frame didn't feel like it was built for that kind of stress. The bike handled awkwardly at low speeds and became stiff and uncooperative when pushed harder. Many riders complained that the front suspension felt vague, while the rear struggled to stay planted in corners. Torque was roughly 45 pounds per foot, giving it decent roll-on performance. But the throttle response wasn't smooth. Power came in late, and when it did, it arrived with a jolt. That sudden delivery made the bike tough to manage in tight traffic or on uneven roads. For riders used to the gentler feel of older BSA twins, the Rocket III felt like an unfamiliar animal. Top speed was reported near 110 miles per hour, which was impressive for its time. But hitting that mark often came with a price. The engine ran hot, very hot. The heat soaked up through the seat and side panels, making longer rides a sweaty challenge. Even worse, the added weight and bulk of the engine made the bike difficult to maneuver at parking lot speeds, especially for smaller riders. Fuel economy floated around 42 miles per gallon, which wasn't terrible, but neither was it enough to offset the frequent maintenance. The engine's internals were packed tight, which made servicing frustrating. Spark plug access was a chore, and valve adjustments were more complicated than they should have been, combined with vibration that loosened bolts and cracked brackets. The Rocket III earned a reputation for keeping mechanics busy. The BSA Rocket III wasn't dangerous because of speed alone. It was dangerous because it demanded more than it gave. It punished hesitation, overwhelmed beginners, and felt rushed in its final form. In trying to chase the future, BSA built a bike that left too many riders looking back, wondering what went wrong. Number 9. Norton Atlas. It didn't take long in the saddle to realize something was off. The Norton Atlas looked tough, sounded aggressive, and had the torque to back it up. But underneath that iconic tank was a problem that no amount of chrome could cover up: vibration. The Atlas used a parallel twin engine, displacing 647 cubic centimeters, a big jump from the earlier Dominator models. The extra power was welcomed by riders, but Norton never fully redesigned the frame to match. The result was a bike that shook itself apart, sometimes literally. Foot pegs rattled loose, mirrors blurred into uselessness, and anything mounted with a bolt had a way of walking off. Power reached about 55 horsepower, which made the Atlas fast in a straight line, but that came at a price. The rubber mounts found in later Norton models didn't exist yet. The engine sat rigid in the frame, transferring every pulse, twist, and bang directly to the rider. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was physically exhausting. Top speed hovered close to 110 miles per hour, but holding it there felt like riding a jackhammer. Long highway trips weren't just tiring, they were numbing. Riders often reported their hands tingling for hours after dismounting, and at lower speeds, things didn't get much better. The bike was heavy at the front, and tight corners required more muscle than finesse. Torque output landed around 42 pounds per foot, giving the Atlas strong mid-range pull. It surged forward with confidence, but the throttle was touchy. A small twist could lurch the bike forward, making smooth riding a constant battle. For city traffic or tight bends, the bike felt twitchy and stubborn. Fuel economy sat around 45 miles per gallon, but reliability was a different story. The vibration didn't just affect comfort, it affected longevity. Cracked headlamp brackets, leaking fuel lines, and fractured fenders were all part of the package. Regular tightening and roadside repairs became part of the Atlas experience. Even basic maintenance was made harder by the constant wear. Carburetor settings would drift. Electrical connectors would shake loose. Owners learned to carry tools, because something always needed adjusting, tightening, or remounting. The Norton Atlas wasn't a bad design. It was a good idea pushed too far. The power was there, the style was there, but the ride was brutal. It wasn't the kind of bike that tried to hurt you. It just didn't know how to stop. Number 8. Royal Enfield Interceptor. The Royal Enfield Interceptor, with its big parallel twin and bold ambitions, promised to take on the best from Triumph, Norton, and BSA. But riders quickly learned that this bike didn't just require skill, it required caution. The engine was massive for its time, displacing 736 cubic centimeters. On paper, it looked like a serious contender, especially for the American market. The Interceptor produced strong acceleration and delivered it with a deep, muscular growl. But the good news stopped there. Peak horsepower landed around 52 horsepower, giving the bike serious thrust. However, the frame wasn't ready for it. Handling was loose at best, unpredictable at worst. The bike tended to flex under heavy cornering, and the front end wandered at speed. Riders often found themselves correcting lines mid-turn, a dangerous game when combined with uneven roads or traffic. Top speed approached 115 miles per hour, but stability was questionable. Wind buffeting and road vibrations made the ride feel twitchy. Some riders even reported tank slappers during high-speed runs, especially when the bike was loaded or the surface was rough. The high center of gravity and dated suspension didn't help. Torque output was respectable, coming in around 55 pounds per foot. That gave the Interceptor strong roll-on performance in mid-range revs, but it also put strain on the rear tire and chain, both of which wore quickly and demanded constant attention. Inexperienced riders often found the throttle too aggressive for slow or technical riding. Fuel economy hovered near 38 miles per gallon, and the bike's electrical system didn't do it any favors. Many owners struggled with erratic spark, failing rectifiers and batteries that drained without reason. Combine that with oil leaks from the crankcase and head, and it became clear the Interceptor needed more time in the shop than on the road. Servicing was no picnic. The engine was bulky, the parts wore unevenly, and access to key components was frustrating. Valve lash needed frequent checks, and the engine's heat made everything more difficult. Long rides often ended with burned legs and rattled bolts. The Royal Enfield Interceptor was fast, loud, and bold, but it was also unstable, unreliable, and unforgiving. It had all the makings of a great machine, except the one that mattered most: rideability. Number 7. Suzuki T500. The Suzuki T500 didn't make headlines with design or noise, it just waited for you to make a mistake. Then, it punished you for it. Launched in 1968, the T500 came equipped with a 2-stroke parallel twin engine, displacing 492 cubic centimeters. It was straightforward, piston-ported, and air-cooled. What made it different wasn't what it had. It was what it didn't. No frills, no forgiveness, and no margin for error. Peak output hovered near 47 horsepower, which on paper seemed reasonable, but the power delivery was abrupt, especially in the mid-range. It didn't surge so much as snap forward, catching riders off guard. That made throttle control a balancing act, particularly in tight traffic or twisty back roads. Top speed was just above 105 miles per hour, but hitting that figure wasn't the issue. Surviving it was. The frame, though improved over earlier models, still flexed under pressure. At high speed, the bike drifted offline in corners and shifted unsettlingly during hard braking. It didn't wobble, it wandered. Torque came in at around 38 pounds per foot, arriving earlier than most riders expected. On dry pavement, it was manageable. On anything else, wet roads, gravel, uneven terrain, it became a liability. A small twist of the grip could kick the rear out just enough to ruin your day. Fuel economy was respectable, sitting close to 50 miles per gallon, and the engine was famously reliable. But that only meant you spent more time riding and noticing what didn't work. The narrow tires felt unstable at highway speed. The brakes, both drums, faded quickly and lacked bite, and the soft suspension turned rough roads into unpredictable challenges. The riding position didn't help. Flat handlebars and a hard saddle made long rides uncomfortable, while the vibration creeping through the frame added fatigue fast. Crosswinds were another story. The bike moved with them, and not in a reassuring way. Maintenance was simple but frequent. Chain tension needed constant checking, and the carburetors had a habit of drifting out of sync. It was a mechanic's bike, but not a beginner's friend. The Suzuki T500 was a machine that never lied. It did exactly what you told it to, but faster, sharper, and with fewer safety nets than you were ready for. And if you stopped paying attention, even for a second, it let you know just how dangerous honesty could be. Think we nailed the list? Or did we leave off a true two-wheel disaster? Let us know in the comments. Smash that like button and hit subscribe for more brutally honest takes on vintage motorcycle madness. Number 6. Honda CB450 Black Bomber. It had the looks of a revolution and the specs to prove it, but the Honda CB450 Black Bomber from 1965 wasn't nearly as predictable as its polished finish suggested. This was Honda's first real shot at a big displacement performance bike, and while it introduced new ideas, it also introduced problems riders hadn't dealt with before. The engine was impressive, especially for its time. A parallel twin displacing 444 cubic centimeters. It featured dual overhead cams and an over-square design with a bore of 70 millimeters and stroke of 57.8 millimeters. It revved high, ran clean, and made plenty of power, but it also demanded more rider input than most were used to. Output peaked at around 43 horsepower, delivered at a screaming 9,000 revolutions per minute. The engine felt alive at high revs, but lacked torque down low. That meant slow speed riding was choppy, and stalls were common if you didn't stay on the throttle. For a bike meant to go toe-to-toe with British twins, it felt underwhelming off the line and frantic at mid-range. Top speed crept just past 105 miles per hour, which made it competitive in straight-line performance. But the chassis didn't quite keep up. Handling was quick but twitchy. The front end had a tendency to dive under braking, and the rear shocks rebounded unpredictably over rough surfaces. The lightweight frame felt agile, but sometimes too light, especially in crosswinds or under hard cornering. Torque settled near 28 pounds per foot, arriving late in the rev range. That created a narrow power band that rewarded aggressive riding, but punished hesitation. First-time riders often found the bike jerky and difficult to modulate, particularly in stop-and-go traffic or hilly terrain. Fuel economy landed around 65 miles per gallon, and mechanically the bike was solid. But reliability wasn't the issue. Rideability was. The clutch had a stiff pull, the seating position was oddly cramped, and the throttle response required constant finesse. Add to that Honda's unconventional torsion bar valve springs and horizontally split crankcase, and you had a bike that was mechanically complex for the average owner. The Honda CB450 Black Bomber looked like the future, and in many ways it was. But its abrupt power, tricky handling, and high-revving nature made it a handful for anyone not ready to treat it like a race bike. It didn't try to kill you, but it never stopped testing you either. Number 5. Yamaha YDS3. The Yamaha YDS3 from 1964 was a compact, ambitious machine, built to prove that small displacement didn't mean small danger, and it proved that point with sharp reflexes and a few nasty habits. At the heart of the YDS3 sat a two-stroke parallel twin, displacing 246 cubic centimeters. It came equipped with Yamaha's signature auto lube system, eliminating the need for pre-mixing fuel and oil. That alone made it more approachable for casual riders. But beneath that convenience was a power plant that had little interest in going easy on you. Power output was rated near 29 horsepower, but it came alive all at once. The YDS3 had a peaky delivery that exploded above 5,000 revolutions per minute. And for those unfamiliar with two-strokes, that sudden surge could be terrifying. The engine didn't climb the revs, it launched through them. Top speed edged past 90 miles per hour, but keeping the bike stable at high speeds required a steady hand and full attention. The lightweight frame, while agile, could get unsettled quickly. The front forks were soft under braking, and the rear suspension tended to jump up and down on bumpy roads. It felt nimble in city traffic, but unstable when pushed on open roads or twisty corners. Torque was modest, hovering around 18 pounds per foot, and it arrived late. That left a noticeable lag at low RPMs. Below the power band, the bike felt sluggish, but once it hit the sweet spot, it surged with intensity. That unpredictability made slow speed maneuvers and technical riding tricky, especially for new riders or anyone expecting a smooth curve. Fuel economy was decent for a two-stroke, averaging close to 42 miles per gallon. But the trade-off was frequent maintenance. The carbs needed regular tuning. The auto lube system had to be watched carefully, and the bike's tendency to foul spark plugs was a constant frustration. It didn't take much neglect for things to go sideways. Stopping power was limited. The drum brakes were fine at low speed, but quickly faded under pressure. And with how quickly the bike could accelerate, that mismatch made panic stops feel like a gamble. The Yamaha YDS3 was small, sharp, and deceptively fierce. It didn't give you time to think, it expected you to know. And for those who didn't, it was all too easy to find themselves in over their heads. Number 4. BSA 65 Lightning. It had a name that promised electricity and speed, but the BSA Lightning Rocket delivered a ride that was far more volatile than thrilling. Introduced in 1964, this was BSA's effort to challenge the growing American appetite for power. What they built instead was a machine that demanded constant caution. The engine was a parallel twin, displacing 654 cubic centimeters. It was air-cooled and ran on a traditional overhead valve design. On paper, the specs looked competitive. In motion, the bike had a tendency to misbehave. The Lightning Rocket may have offered more performance than earlier models, but that came with sacrifices to stability and build quality. Horsepower topped out near 50 horsepower, giving the bike strong pull off the line. But at higher speeds, the handling turned vague. The front end felt light and disconnected, and the twin down-tube frame flexed more than it should have. At anything over 70 miles per hour, the entire chassis began to float, and aggressive riders often found themselves correcting mid-turn with crossed fingers. The ride wasn't just unpredictable, it was exhausting. It demanded full attention on every stretch of road. Long-distance riding became a mental workout, where every bump or gust of wind could knock the bike off balance. Top speed landed just shy of 110 miles per hour, which sounded impressive until you tried holding it. The bike suffered from what riders called nervousness at speed. Even in a straight line, it felt like the frame and wheels were arguing. Add in uneven pavement or a gust of wind, and things could go from fast to frightening in a heartbeat. The geometry didn't help either. Slightly off rake and trail figures meant the front wheel constantly felt unsure of where it was going. Riders who tried to push the bike hard often backed off, not because of skill limits, but because they didn't trust what the chassis would do next. Torque sat around 43 pounds per foot, arriving early in the rev range. That gave the bike solid mid-range grunt, but also made low-speed throttle control sensitive. A small input could send the rear tire slipping, especially in wet or loose conditions. Combined with narrow tires and basic suspension, the Lightning Rocket required a delicate touch to keep upright. Fuel economy came in at nearly 47 miles per gallon, which wasn't bad for the era. But owners quickly discovered they were spending more time fixing than riding. The electrical system was unreliable, with failing rectifiers and erratic spark issues. Oil leaks were common. Fasteners shook loose. Even the side covers were known to pop off mid-ride. Braking was another issue. The drum setup was barely adequate for city speeds and borderline useless at highway velocity. Fade came fast, and in emergencies, the bike responded more with prayer than grip. The BSA Lightning Rocket was built to impress, but ended up exposing every weak point under pressure. It wasn't a bad motorcycle. It was just one that didn't know how to behave when things got serious. Number 3, Kawasaki H1 Mach III. The Kawasaki H1 Mach III didn't just show up, it exploded onto the scene. In 1969, it was the fastest thing you could buy for the money. But what Kawasaki gave in speed, they took away in safety. And this bike's danger didn't hide. It hit you at full throttle. At its core was a two-stroke inline triple displacing 499 cubic centimeters. That was already a bold move for the time. But Kawasaki pushed it further by tuning the engine for pure aggression. There was nothing subtle about the H1. It came alive fast, pulled hard, and gave the rider very little time to think. Peak power landed around 60 horsepower, arriving high in the rev range. When the bike hit that power band, it didn't climb. It snapped forward like it was shot out of a cannon. This sudden hit of acceleration became infamous. First-time riders were often thrown backward, with the front wheel lifting off the pavement whether they meant it to or not. Top speed edged just above 115 miles per hour, and the bike got there alarmingly fast. But while the engine begged for more, the frame begged for mercy. Handling was not the Mach III's strong suit. The suspension was basic, the forks were underdamped, and the chassis flexed when pushed. In corners, it felt disconnected. At speed, it felt outright unstable. Torque came in at roughly 44 pounds per foot, which gave it brutal pull in second and third gear. But the narrow tires and poor weight distribution made that torque hard to control. Rear wheel slides and front-end liftoffs weren't reserved for racers. They happened in everyday riding, sometimes without warning. Fuel economy hovered around 38 miles per gallon, but that wasn't what riders remembered. They remembered the brakes, or more accurately, the lack of them. The front drum brake was notoriously weak, and the rear added little help. Stopping the Mach III from high speeds required a long stretch of road and a whole lot of faith. Even the ergonomics fought back. The seat was slippery, the bars were wide, and the controls felt twitchy. Maintenance was manageable, but spark plugs fouled frequently, and the oil injection system required careful monitoring. It wasn't a bike that rewarded carelessness. The Kawasaki H1 Mach III earned its Widowmaker nickname the hard way. It was fast, loud, and unforgiving. A thrill for the brave, a lesson for the unlucky, and a danger to anyone who thought they were in control. Number 2. Piatti Scooter. You didn't ride the Piatti Precision 2 because you wanted to. You rode it because you had no other option, or hadn't heard the warnings yet. By the time the 1960s rolled around, this scooter's bad reputation had already settled in. But for those still brave, or unlucky enough to own one, it became a rolling lesson in how not to build a motorcycle. The engine was a single-cylinder, two-stroke unit displacing 123 cubic centimeters. That alone wasn't the problem. The problem was everything wrapped around it. The engine was underpowered, sluggish to respond, and mounted low in a pressed steel monocoque frame that flexed like cardboard under stress. The result was a ride that felt slow, sloppy, and sometimes flat-out unsafe. Power output was just shy of 5 horsepower, which would have been fine for a small scooter if the weight and friction hadn't soaked up most of it. Acceleration was painfully slow. It took the Piatti over 30 seconds to reach 40 miles per hour, and getting beyond that required a tailwind and a long downhill stretch. Top speed barely scratched 50 miles per hour. But the real issue wasn't how fast it went. It was what happened when it got there. The brakes were weak drums that faded fast, the suspension was nearly non-functional, and the steering geometry made the front end wander at speed. You didn't just hold the handlebars, you wrestled them. Even gentle cornering felt unpredictable. The tires skidded under pressure, and the frame flexed with every bump. Riders often felt like passengers waiting to find out what the scooter would do next. Torque figures were minimal, barely reaching 6 pounds per foot, and even that was delivered through a drivetrain that seemed determined to waste it. The clutch slipped under load, and the transmission had a vague feel that made gear changes more of a guess than a shift. Hills became a challenge. Carrying a passenger? Forget it. The added weight completely overwhelmed the engine, often causing stalls mid-slope. Some owners removed the passenger seat altogether, less for comfort, more out of mercy. Fuel economy did hit impressive numbers, often above 70 miles per gallon, but it came at the cost of real-world functionality. Riders spent more time coaxing the engine to life than enjoying any savings at the pump. The ignition was unreliable, the wiring was prone to shorts, and the carburetor needed constant fiddling just to idle cleanly. Parts wore out quickly. The tires were thin and wore unevenly. The stamped frame rusted fast and offered almost no crash protection. Even basic maintenance was awkward, with panels that had to be removed for the simplest jobs. The headlamp often rattled loose, the horn barely worked, and replacement parts were notoriously hard to find. The Piatti Precision 2 wasn't just flawed, it was dangerous in the quietest, most avoidable way possible. A scooter that looked like freedom, but rode like a warning label no one bothered to read. Number 1. Suzuki RE5. Some motorcycles make history with speed, others do it by breaking rules. The Suzuki RE5, released in the mid-70s, but conceived in the late 60s, did both, and not in a good way. Marketed as the future of motorcycling, this rotary-powered experiment became one of the decade's most misunderstood and mishandled machines. At the heart of the RE5 was a single-rotor Wankel engine, displacing 497 cubic centimeters. It wasn't just unusual, it was revolutionary. Quiet, smooth, and oddly compact, the engine gave off the illusion of refinement. But once the novelty wore off, what remained was a power plant that confused mechanics, drained fuel, and punished careless riders with heat and failure. Power came in around 62 horsepower, a strong figure for the time. But it wasn't how much power the bike made, it was how unpredictably it delivered it. The throttle response was soft at first, then surged abruptly in the mid-range. For riders used to the steady pull of a 4-stroke twin or inline-4, the RE5 felt like a machine with 2 personalities. It crawled, then lunged. Top speed was just above 110 miles per hour, but most riders never dared to test it for long. The frame was heavy, and the suspension lacked precision. The front forks dived aggressively under braking, and the rear shocks offered minimal rebound control. On paper, it was a touring bike. In practice, it handled like a wet mattress. Torque peaked at around 46 pounds per foot, but its delivery wasn't linear. Low-end response was sluggish, which made takeoffs from a stop clumsy and unpredictable. The bike needed revs to wake up, and by the time it came alive, most riders had already given up trying to time it right. Fuel economy was one of its most glaring weaknesses. With a thirsty rotary engine and a small tank, the RE5 averaged just over 28 miles per gallon. That kind of consumption wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous on long rides. Many owners reported running out of fuel before reaching the next stop, simply because they underestimated how quickly the tank drained. Heat management was another disaster. The engine ran hot, blisteringly hot. The cooling fan was loud and often insufficient, especially in traffic or during summer riding. Side panels and tank areas became uncomfortably warm. The exhaust headers glowed in the dark. One careless leg placement at a red light could earn you a lifelong scar. Maintenance was a mechanic's nightmare. The rotary design was unfamiliar to most shops. Spark plugs fouled quickly. The oil injection system required constant adjustment, and the specialized tools needed for engine work were nearly impossible to find. Even basic tune-ups became stressful. The Suzuki RE5 was bold, strange, and unlike anything else on the road. But it was also heavy, hot, hard to ride, and brutally inefficient. Suzuki tried to build the motorcycle of tomorrow and instead built a museum piece of what went wrong when vision outpaced reality. Some bikes earn respect. These 12 earned fear. If you've got a 60s machine that tried to kill you, tell us in the comments. Like the video if you made it out alive, and subscribe for more brutal bike breakdowns.